The photo of his daughter haunted Samuel's thoughts. For the first time since the boardroom coup, the battle wasn't about pride, money, or respect. It was about survival. That night, Samuel parked a block away from his daughter Jasmine's school and waited in the shadows. At exactly 8 p.m., a black SUV rolled up. Tinted windows, no plates. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the street. They weren't picking up a child, they were hunting. Samuel's heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He'd been underestimated before, as a janitor, as an investor, as a man, but they had just underestimated something even more dangerous. A father. When the men tried to follow Jasmine down the sidewalk, Samuel moved like a ghost. A pipe wrench, pulled from his old janitor's kit, swung through the air. One man dropped instantly. The other reached for a gun, but Samuel slammed him into the SUV's hood. "Tell Kane," Samuel growled, his voice low and deadly. "If he wants a war, he just declared it." He tossed the unconscious man into the car, grabbed his daughter, and sped away before sirens filled the night. Safe at home, Samuel sat Jasmine down. She was shaken but brave. "Dad, why are they after us? You're just... you?" He looked her in the eyes, the weight of years of secrets pressing down on him. "No, baby girl. I'm not just a janitor. I'm the man who owns half of Kane's empire, and now he wants it all?" Jasmine's eyes widened. "So, what are you going to do?" Samuel turned toward the window, the city glowing like a battlefield in the distance. "I'm going to finish what I started." The next morning, headlines exploded. Victor Kane exposed an offshore tax fraud scandal. Authorities launch investigation. It was Samuel's move. He had been quietly compiling evidence for years, waiting for the right time to strike. Now, Kane was cornered. But Victor Kane wasn't a man who backed down. He was a man who burned everything in his path. That evening, Samuel walked into the boardroom expecting chaos. Instead, the executive sat calmly. Too calmly. Victor Kane stood at the head of the table, smiling. "Impressive work, Mr. Screen. You've embarrassed me in the press, cost me millions. Clever. But you've made one fatal mistake." He snapped his fingers. Two men wheeled in a television. On the screen was live footage of Jasmine lost in her bedroom. Kane's voice was ice. "You think you're the only one who can plan ahead? You try to take my empire, I'd take your bloodline." This was no longer business. This was no longer pride. This was a war where the cost of failure wasn't money. It was family. And in wars like these, mercy doesn't exist. Samuel clenched his fists, every nerve in his body on fire. "Victor, if you touch her..." Kane cut him off with a smirk. "I don't plan to touch her. I plan to make you watch what happens when men like you forget their place." The boardroom was silent. All eyes darted between Samuel and Victor Kane. The tension so thick it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. On the screen, Jasmine's bedroom flickered under surveillance. She had no idea strangers were watching her every move. Victor Kane leaned forward. "You want to play games with me, Samuel?" "Fine, but remember, kings don't kneel to janitors." Samuel's fists tightened until his knuckles turned white. For years he had played it quietly, building power from the shadows. But Victor Kane had crossed the one line no man should ever cross. "This isn't business anymore," Samuel said, his voice low but filled with fire. "This is personal." He stormed out before Kane could respond. The war had officially begun. That night, Samuel reached out to the people Kane had underestimated, just like he once underestimated Samuel. A security guard Kane had fired without severance. An accountant Kane had threatened into silence. A young coder whose software Kane had stolen and rebranded. "Victor thinks he has an empire," Samuel told them. "But an empire built on fear will collapse the moment the truth comes out. Are you ready to help me take him down?" They all nodded. For the first time, Kane's enemies weren't afraid. They had a leader. 2 days later, Victor Kane arrived at his headquarters to chaos. Federal agents swarmed the building. Trucks carried out boxes of files. Screens lit up with subpoenas. Every dirty deal, every offshore account, every hidden crime Samuel had collected was now in the hands of the government. The empire Kane built for decades was crumbling in front of him, brick by brick. And in the middle of it all, Samuel stood calmly, watching. "You thought I was just a janitor," Samuel said quietly as Kane was dragged past him in handcuffs. "But you forgot who really owns the building." For a moment, it looked like justice had finally been served. But then, as Kane was shoved into the back of the police car, he smirked. "You think this is over, Samuel? You think the government works for you?" He leaned forward, his voice dark and venomous. "I own them. And by the time you get home, you'll realize I still own her, too." Just when it seemed like the fight was over, Samuel learned a cruel truth. Some enemies don't break under pressure. They grow more dangerous, and Kane wasn't done playing Samuel raced home. The front door was wide open. Jasmine's room was empty. On her desk, a single note written in Kane's hand. "If you want to see her again, you'll give me everything. The company, the money, the truth. You have 24 hours?" He whispered one word. "War." The clock ticked. 24 hours. That's all Kane gave Samuel to hand over his fortune. Or lose Jasmine forever? But Samuel wasn't about to negotiate with the snake. This time he'd burn Kane's entire empire to the ground. The night was silent as Samuel slid a duffel bag onto his kitchen table. Inside, burner phones, encrypted flash drives, and a pistol he swore he'd never touch again. The ex-Navy SEAL who once owed Samuel his life stood at the door. "You sure about this?" he asked. Samuel's eyes narrowed. "I don't want revenge. I want her back by morning." Kane's underground network started to unravel. First, the money. Samuel's team of coders drained offshore accounts, turning Kane's millions into dust. Next, the muscle. The private security goons Kane sent to watch Samuel's house never made it back. They were outmatched, outsmarted, and sent crawling back with a message. The janitor fights back. Finally, the silence. Samuel hacked the very cameras Kane once used to spy on Jasmine. Now they fed Samuel live feeds of Kane's hideouts. For the first time, Kane was being hunted. Hours before the deadline, Samuel tracked the signal of Jasmine's phone to an abandoned luxury estate outside the city. Victor Kane had always flaunted wealth, but this place was different. Fortified, guarded, a fortress for a man who knew his empire was falling. Samuel whispered to his crew, "This ends tonight." The gate exploded open. Floodlights cut through the night. Kane's guards rushed out only to be met with precision strikes. Samuel moved like a ghost, silent, focused, unstoppable. One guard grabbed him by the throat. Samuel slammed him into the marble steps, whispering, "Tell your boss the janitor's here." Inside, Kane waited, a gun in one hand, Jasmine in the other. "Drop it, Samuel," Kane sneered, "or she dies." For the first time, Samuel showed fear. His daughter's eyes were filled with tears, her wrists bound. "You wanted war?" Kane spat. "This is what war looks like." Samuel raised his weapon, then lowered it. "No, this isn't war. This is survival. And you've already lost at that exact moment. The estate's power cut out." Screens flickered back on, broadcasting Kane live across every news station. Holding Jasmine hostage, confessing to his crimes, with every hidden camera Samuel had hacked. Feeding the world. Kane's empire wasn't just collapsing now, it was burning. Kane roared with fury, grabbing Jasmine tighter. "You think they'll believe you, Samuel? You think they'll save her before I pull this trigger?" Samuel stepped forward, calm as ice. "Try me." Suddenly, a shot rang out. Kane stumbled backward, blood on his sleeve. Jasmine broke free, but just as Samuel rushed to grab her, another figure stepped from the shadows. Not Cain, a woman. She was dressed in black, eyes sharp as steel. She pressed a gun to Samuel's chest. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "You think Cain was the boss? He was just the face." "I'm the one who owns this empire," Jasmine screamed. Cain laughed through his pain, and Samuel? He froze, realizing the truth. Cain wasn't the final enemy. The true mastermind had just revealed herself.